family is now facing monthly power bills nearly 3 times higher than before the global health crisis. Marseille is in the clutch of a violent crisis. 2 drug gangs defend their territories at any cost. Protest against President Macron's plans to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. France's debt has reached a record 3.228 trillion euros, amounting to 112% of GDP. That's well above the cap set by EU rules. Despite being known for its fashion industry, cultural heritage, and diverse scenery, living in France is much more challenging than you might think. In a 2025 poll, 87% of respondents agreed that the country is in decline. The poverty rate was 14% in 2022, up from 6.6% in 2002, as the number of poor people increased by 1.4 million in 20 years. That same year, President Macron stated in a television interview that foreigners, either illegal immigrants or waiting for a residence permit, accounted for more than half of the crime in the capital. With that said, it's easy to see why he has faced criticism for his perceived failure to effectively address illegal immigration in France, as the number of undocumented migrants in the country continues to rise. By 2023, estimates indicated that there were around 450,000 illegal immigrants within France, and data for 2024 revealed a net migration rate of 152,000, a significant portion of which is believed to stem from undocumented individuals. For those that live in the country's capital city, Paris, life can get very expensive, regularly making the list of the top 10 most expensive cities in the world. For couples, the cost of living in Paris can range from 3,000 to 4,000 euros, depending on location and preferences. While it rivals places like New York City's $4,195 or San Francisco's $3,670, Paris rents are significantly higher than Berlin's 1,300 euros and Rome's 1,400 euros. Between 1991 and April 2022, the price per square meter of existing housing in Paris rose from 3,463 euros to 10,760 euros, an increase of around 3.6% per year on average. To buy a small flat, it can cost up to 20 times the average salary. Elsewhere, in places like the Quarteries Nord area, more than 200,000 people live in what many describe as concrete jungles, where families are crammed into tiny flats, and drugs provide a steady income. These areas have been neglected for decades. Public transport, jobs, and education are very limited. On Marseille's estates, trouble is simmering. Here, shootings are frequent, and cannabis and cocaine provide a steady income. In 2024, a 2-year streak of rapid inflation proved to leave many low- and middle-income French families struggling to pay for essentials like energy, gas, and food, while wages in some cases have failed to keep pace. Among the other EU's Big Four, the inflation rate was above the EU average for Spain at 3.5%, while Germany was at 3.1%, and the UK was 4.2%. While France was in the middle at 3.4%, this is not something to sweep under the rug. For those looking to buy a home, things aren't looking that positive either. France has one of the lowest homeownership rates in Europe. In 2022, approximately 63% of people lived in an owner-occupied home, compared to 65% in the UK. And as recently as 2023, France was near the bottom of the list for homeownership rates in selected European countries at 63.1%, with only Denmark, Turkey, Austria, Germany, and Switzerland having lower rates. Combine this with rapidly increasing crime rates, immigration issues, a high level of public debt, and serious concerns about unemployment, and it's clear that France is on shaky grounds. This marks a dramatic shift from the country that was once seen as a leader in equality, solidarity, and freedom. So the question is, what has gone so drastically wrong? And will things get better? Today on Across the Globe, we'll be exploring why living in France has become impossible. A new page of our history has been turned tonight, and I would like it to be that of hope, confiance, and of trust. We found France's renewal of our public life will be imposed upon everyone from tomorrow. Emmanuel Jean-Michel Frédéric Macron emerged as president of France in 2017, following a remarkable political ascent that included his role as Minister of Economy, Industry, and Digital Affairs. His candidacy was marked by a bold vision for the country, encapsulated in a mission statement that aimed to revitalize France through progressive economic reforms and an open-door policy towards migrants from the Middle East and Africa. Macron sought to unite a deeply divided nation, promoting innovation, entrepreneurship, and a commitment to European unity. His victory promised an opportunity to usher in a new era of politics, breaking away from traditional party lines. However, rather than achieving a long-lasting consensus, Macron's presidency has been characterized by ongoing political crises, growing resentment over his reform agenda, and widespread protests, underscoring the challenges of navigating an increasingly polarized political landscape in France. In 2017, Macron's induction speech won praise for his vision of a stronger, more united Europe. He stressed cooperation, shared values, and renewed commitment to the EU. His message resonated with many, establishing him as a leader ready to tackle continental challenges. In contrast, across the English Channel, British Prime Minister Theresa May's speech in Florence received significant backlash, as she struggled to convey a cohesive vision for the United Kingdom's post-Brexit future. Yet, as of 2025, Macron has been in office for nearly 8 years and issues in the country are growing. By 2024, Emmanuel Macron faced the worst political crisis of his presidency as voter dissatisfaction grew. In the wake of a no-confidence vote that toppled his government, Macron criticized the cynicism, lack of responsibility, and prevailing sense of chaos among opposing politicians, making it clear he had nothing to do with what's going on in France right now. "I won't shoulder other people's irresponsibility," he declared, attempting to deflect accountability. However, many citizens remained unconvinced, feeling that his policies and leadership were contributing factors to the instability. A recent survey by the French Institute of Public Opinion, IFOP, revealed that 60% of the French population expressed dissatisfaction with both Macron's governance and the overall state of the nation. One of the most pressing issues under Macron's leadership has been the country's flat growth and a large debt and deficit, with the country facing a new period of instability without a functioning government or a budget. By the end of 2024, France's economy was only 4.1% larger than it was in the final quarter of 2019, falling behind the growth of Italy's 5.6% increase. Struggling with a combination of high debt and budget deficit and stagnant growth, public sector workers have gone on strikes across the country over the issue of unfair salaries and working conditions. France has already endured weeks of disruption at petrol stations. Supplies have been hit as workers at refineries and depots walked out to demand higher pay. On Tuesday, unions began a nationwide strike over pay in other sectors. In 2018, France had 9.3 million people living below the poverty line, compared to 8.9 million the previous year when Macron came to power. According to a survey conducted in May 2024, in France, the subjective poverty line was €1,396. This minimum income, decided by the French population, under which a single person was considered poor, increased by €19 compared to the previous year. Moreover, during the given period, the subjective poverty line increased in total by €390. Young people between the ages of 18 and 29 have proven to be more affected than others. According to the observatory, single people are affected twice as much as couples. According to the observatory's measurements, poverty means having €1,000 per month for a person living alone, €1,500 for a couple without children, and €2,500 for a family with 2 children over the age of 14. A quarter of unemployed people live in poverty, compared to only 2.9% of salaried workers. As mentioned, France stands out as a country with a significant portion of its children living in poverty. The country has a total child population of approximately 4.47 million, 22.8% of which lived at risk of poverty and social exclusion in 2021. This amounts to approximately 3.3 million children. While unemployment in France has been steadily decreasing in recent years, it is still considered relatively high compared to other developed nations, with the current unemployment rate hovering around 7.3%, 2.9% higher than the UK's 4.4% unemployment rate. While both countries have grappled with unemployment for a long time, many would argue that poverty has led to more crime in the UK. However, 67.93% of French citizens believe crime has increased in the last 3 years, compared to 53.3% of UK citizens believing crime has increased over the same time period. Let's just talk about what's happened overnight. One person was killed, 2 police officers seriously injured. This is in France, which Macron is calling an Islamist terror attack. The Algerian suspect, who authorities said was on the terror prevention watch list, he was arrested in the city of Mulhouse near the Swiss and German borders. This surge in migration has become a controversial topic, particularly as Europe and France have experienced an influx of arrivals that outpaced departures in recent years. In an effort to respond to this challenge, France's Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, introduced a circular in January 2024, outlining new criteria aimed at allowing certain undocumented foreigners to regularize their status. These criteria included requirements such as a longer duration of stay in France and a demonstrable proficiency in the French language. In France, 45% of the population believes that there are too many immigrants, according to a 2022 Kantar survey. To better understand this, it's worth tracing back and exploring the country's past. France has a complex history that has been shaped by waves of immigration, influencing its cultural, social, and economic landscape. From the early days of the French Republic in the late 18th century, France has positioned itself as a land of refuge and opportunity, attracting immigrants seeking a better life. Throughout the 19th century, France experienced a considerable influx of immigrants, particularly from neighboring countries like Ireland, Italy, Spain, and Belgium, as the Industrial Revolution created demand for labor in cities and factories. This migration has contributed to France's economic growth and cultural diversity for a long time. The early 20th century saw additional waves of immigration, primarily driven by the need for labor during both world wars, with workers coming from French colonies in North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Indochina. However, immigration in France has always brought challenges. Throughout the years, economic downturns and social tensions have often been linked to immigration, political backlash as a result. The rise of nationalist and anti-immigration sentiments, particularly in the late 20th and 21st centuries, has caused considerable debate over integration and national identity. The complexities of France's relationship with immigration were further highlighted in the 21st century, with the arrival of immigrants from conflict-ridden regions such as Syria and Afghanistan. However, it's important to note that illegal immigrants are not the sole reason that crime is an ongoing issue in France. In this southern suburb of Paris, these middle school students mourn the loss of their classmate after he was beaten to death on his way home from school. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal announced a sweeping crackdown on teenage violence in and around schools in 2024. Known as the Gang Plan, this program addressed youth violence, particularly among minors. The plan includes initiatives to improve social ties and provide educational opportunities. When speaking about the matter, Attal said some teenagers in France are addicted to violence, saying, "There are twice as many adolescents involved in assault cases, 4 times more in drug trafficking, and 7 times more in armed robberies than in the general population." France's issue with drug crime cannot be ignored in the conversation of the country's cost of living crisis. While not everyone resorts to crime to make ends meet, many do. In cities like Marseille, the streets are overrun with gangs who deal drugs and use teenagers as hitmen. Cocaine use has never been more widespread. 1.1 million French people used the drug at least once in 2023. That's nearly twice the figure given for the year 2021 to 2022. In addition to issues of violence and drug-related crime, France has experienced several high-profile terrorist attacks, leading the government to take measures including enhancing intelligence sharing among agencies, promoting community engagement to counter extremist ideologies, and increasing security at public venues and events. Furthermore, like many nations, France is increasingly focused on defending against the rising threat of cyber attacks, recognizing the critical need to protect vital infrastructure from digital vulnerabilities. The multifaceted nature of these threats underscores the ongoing challenges that France faces in ensuring both public safety and national stability in a rapidly evolving security environment. Moreover, the nation is characterized by its protest culture, where citizens actively engage in demonstrations to voice their disagreement on various issues, including pension reforms, labor laws, and climate policies. France is convulsing again, fractured over changes to public pensions that would make people work longer to get them. In Paris, tear gas filled the air. For the average person, concerns about safety are one issue. But the anxiety of figuring out how to manage daily life presents a completely different kind of fear, one that many French people know all too well. In 2023, it was reported that over a third of people living in France cannot afford 3 meals a day and are forced to cut back on necessities like food and medical expenses. The survey found that rising inflation and high prices have thrown more people below the poverty line. A total of 53% said they could no longer put money aside, and 18% had a negative balance in their bank account, 3 percentage points more than the previous year. Also, a total of 45% of the French people surveyed said they were unable to pay for at least some of their medical expenses, representing 6 percentage points more than 2022. According to the World Health Organization, France had one of the lowest levels of catastrophic health spending in the EU, affecting 2% of households, around 800,000 people in 2017. However, they noted that people who experience catastrophic health spending may not be able to pay for other basic needs such as food, housing, and heating. By 2023, things had gotten worse, with over 8 million French people living in a medical desert, and 6 million not having access to an attending doctor. So amidst this level of unrest and uncertainty, are the people of France happy? Well, in 2022, the Connection stated that happiness levels were still high, but those struggling financially are less content, amid rising worries over purchasing power, quality of life, climate change, and health. In 2024, it was reported that only 9% of the French population was flourishing. So, it is more evident that France faces significant challenges, particularly as its national government debt rose to an alarming $3,409.6 billion USD in March 2024. To reverse this troubling trend and foster economic resilience, it is crucial for the French government to prioritize a reduction in public spending. Moreover, embracing reforms that simplify regulation, coupled with strategic investments in vocational training and the modernization of the education system, can help to empower the youth and steer them away from criminal activities. By taking these comprehensive steps, France can not only stabilize its economy, but also pave the way for a more promising future for its citizens. What about why living in Germany has become impossible?